Well, good afternoon and hello, everyone. Welcome to the third webinar of WLA's Summer Water Webinar Series. We will just take a few minutes here to let everyone join us today and get settled. We're really excited to hopefully have about 200 or so odd people joining us this afternoon. So thank you for taking an hour out of your Friday. We're really excited about today's program. If you have to duck out early today, or if you're interested in rewatching this will be recorded and we will be in touch sometime around the Wednesday mark of next week with a written recap, the video recording. So please do keep an eye out for that. And when you signed up for today's webinar, you did automatically become a Western Landowners Alliance member. So welcome. It is a free membership, but we do rely on support from members like you. So please do consider providing a donation. You can learn more about our work here at Western Landowners Alliance and what it means to be a member if you visit our website. You can find that information in the chat here. So again, welcome, and thank you all for joining us. Looks like people are continuing to roll in, but I think we're in a good spot to get started. So again, welcome. Happy Friday, everyone. My name is Jake Lebsack, and I'm the Western Water Resources Coordinator for Western Landowners Alliance. I'd like to welcome you all to the third webinar of our Summer Water Webinar Series. Today's call is Roots and Rivers, the crucial connection between forests and watersheds. So here in just a few short minutes, we'll learn how watershed collaboratives like the Headwaters of the Colorado Initiative, the 232 Partnership, and the Blackfoot Challenge leverage their collective voices to do projects that benefit forest and watershed health across the West. I would like to note that WLA is a proud partner of the Headwaters of the Colorado and provides support to the organization's mission of creating a resilient and functioning forested headwaters within the landscapes of the Little Snake and Yampa rivers of Wyoming and Colorado. So super excited to hear from them today and from all the other great watershed groups that we have on our panel. Hopefully you've been joining us throughout this summer series, but if you haven't, this call today does follow on the heels of our July water webinar, where we learned about the opportunities and challenges associated with growing alternative forages. If you're interested in rewatching that or reading the recap, you can find that on our website. And I believe Morgan just shared that in the chat. So please do explore that if you're interested. And I did mention it before, but just another brief reminder that we will be recording this webinar and we will be writing up a recap and we will be sending that out to everyone that registered today. So please feel free to rewatch, to share it with your network. If anything today jumps out that you find interesting, we'll have that resource available for you to explore next week. So please do keep an eye on your inbox. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our staff here at Western Landowners Alliance. I'm joined by Linda Poole, the Working Lands Program Director, Louis Wirtz, WLA's Communications Director, and Morgan Wagner, the Colorado River Basin Stewardship Coordinator here for WLA. Now I'd like to pass it over to Morgan, who will provide a brief intro to WLA and our watershed work. So Morgan, please.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Morgan Wagner, the Colorado River Basin Stewardship Coordinator here at WLA. WLA is a landowner-founded and landowner-led West-wide organization. Our mission is to sustain working lands, connected landscapes, and native species. Our membership represents millions of acres of both deeded and leased public lands under management across the West. We have a broad spectrum of land interests, ownership types, and political perspectives. In fact, we span the entire political spectrum, but our common ground is a real love of the land and a desire to keep it whole and healthy for the benefit of people and wildlife. Our work at Western Landowners Alliance is focused on empowering landowners and land managers with the knowledge, resources, and public policies they need to be successful. And we are very pragmatic and solutions-oriented in our approach because we come from the land. We are landowners and managers. We also do a great deal with communications to try to improve public dialogue on complex land and natural resource management issues and to increase understanding of the value of private and working lands and private stewardship. As WLA's Colorado River Basin Stewardship Coordinator, I'm working to assist community watershed organizations in the Colorado River Basin, especially focused on the San Juan, to advance multi-benefit resiliency projects on working lands. So these topics today are especially exciting for me. As Jake pointed out, our membership is free and we want it to be available to anyone as a service to the landowner community. Membership comes with a number of benefits, which will keep you apprised of news and information, resources, and project opportunities. So we encourage you all to participate today and help us spread the word. We are here as a resource for all of you, and thanks again for joining us today.
Great, thanks, Morgan. Today's webinar will feature 4 speakers, followed by a brief Q&A session. So if you have a question for today's panelists, and we sure hope you do, please do use the Q&A function for your inquiry. And if you enjoyed today's program, which we sure hope you do, please do consider joining us in August for the final iteration of this 4-part series, where we'll explore the opportunities for reversing desertification through regreening. You can find that registration info on our website and using the chat function where the link should live now, thanks to Morgan. Again, we're really excited to have about 200 or so odd people registered for today. Hopefully everyone is able to join us. Looks like we're slowly increasing attendance as we get started this afternoon, but we would love to know who you are, where you're located, any affiliations you might have. So if you're so inclined, please do use the chat right now to introduce yourself. And again, please do use the chat function for that and the Q&A function for any questions you might have. So before we get started here today, I did just want to include a quick note, and that is that we understand that watersheds across the West are diverse and that certain organizational strategies are best suited for some places and maybe not for others. And that while we hope today's program is informative and maybe inspirational, the purpose of these webinars is really just to simply share information and provide an opportunity for landowners and industry experts to come together to exchange knowledge. So with that being said, I'm really excited now to introduce our panelists. I'm joined today by Megan O'Toole-Lally, Ken Brenner, Lily Bruce, and Cindy Super. Megan O'Toole-Lally, part of a long-time Wyoming ranching family in the Little Snake River Valley, works full-time on her family's Ladder Ranch. Throughout her career, she has served on Wyoming's Environmental Quality Council and was the youngest person to serve on Wyoming's Board of Agriculture. Megan was named in True West Magazine's Best of the West Awards in 2010, and Megan's father, Pat O'Toole, inspired the Headwaters of the Colorado Initiative, which Megan continues to support along with her daughter, Siobhan. Ken Brenner hails from a 3rd-generation farm and ranch family in the Yampa Valley, bringing a wealth of experience and dedication to his community and the ag sector. He served 14 years with the Upper Yampa Water Conservancy District, 8 years on the Steamboat Springs City Council, and 8 years as a Colorado Mountain College trustee. Ken also contributed 5 years to the Colorado Municipal League Executive Board, 6 years to the Yampa White-Green Basin Roundtable, and 2 years each on the Interbasin Compact Committee, the Colorado Water Congress Board, and the Routt County Planning Commission. His extensive experience underscores his dedication to sustainable agriculture, water management, and community development, which he now contributes to the Headwaters of the Colorado Initiative. In her work with the Forest Stewards Guild, Lily Bruce coordinates the executive committee, the decision-making body of the 232 partnership. The 232 is a large team of teams that bring together place-based collaborative groups, land management agencies, NGO partners, and community members to build relationships that enable intentional and impactful management actions. The 232 operates across nearly 5 million acres, spanning the state line between Colorado and New Mexico, to collaboratively prioritize, plan, and monitor restoration work in key watersheds. In addition to coordinating the executive committee, Lily supports small acreage and underserved landowners in the 232 footprint in implementing climate-smart forest projects. She aims to support resilient, connected human and ecological communities that thrive amidst changing environmental and economic landscapes. And lastly, Cindy Super grew up in the heart of Montana's Blackfoot Valley. She received her BS in forestry from the University of Montana and fought fire with the Seeley Lake Ranger District and the Missoula Smoke Jumpers. She then did a 6-year stint in the U.S. Army, and she returned to Montana in 2006 and was hired at the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. She worked her way back to the Clearwater Unit, where she was most recently a Trust Lands Management Forester. Cindy joined the Blackfoot Challenge in 2020, where she now serves as the Forestry and Prescribed Fire Coordinator. So welcome to you all. Absolutely thrilled to have this panel here today. And I would love to now get started with our first question for Megan here. We did mention it before, Megan, but your father, Pat O'Toole, played a pivotal role in starting the Headwaters of the Colorado Initiative. So curious to know what motivated him to start that project and what the Headwaters of the Colorado is hoping to accomplish. We're muted here, Megan. Hopefully.
Better?
All good.
Okay. Well, thank you for your kind introduction. So my dad's personal philosophy, and the one that we have adopted on the ranch is how do we balance production and conservation? And on our ranch, we're constantly striving to improve our landscape while continuing to produce food and fiber for the world. One of the things that has happened that sort of made my dad look for a different solution. About 10 years ago, we were trying to do a water diversion up on the creek that we live on, Battle Creek. And we'd always done it the way, all our ancestors did it. To go in with the tractor, you push up a whole bunch of gravel, make a dam, divert the water, drop trees. And it's not healthy for the landscape. It's not healthy for the creek. And so we were looking for an alternative, and we started doing diversion structures with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And the last one that we had to do was on the forest. And we had a meeting between the Forest Service and the NRCS, the Conservation District, and our family, and the contractors to try and get the project started. And there were a lot of hoops to jump through in terms of permitting, in terms of getting the money together, in terms of, actually getting the work done on the ground. And it was very frustrating, to try and do that. And so we worked to streamline that process to get all of the people in the same room at the same time, so that these projects can get done on a landscape scale. At this point in the Little Snake River, almost all, I would say 95% of the diversion structures have been converted to fish friendly, with Trout Unlimited and the Conservation District and various other partners. So all of the diversion structures in the valley are fish friendly and are much less impactful in terms of environmental impacts of going in the river with heavy equipment. And so my dad used that model of trying to get all of that done. And he wanted to do it on a landscape scale, more than just our little valley, but the Headwaters of Colorado, is actually 1.9 million acres. And so if we can do this, he wanted to do landscape level projects that increase water yield and improve forest health. And the way to do that is to get all the people in the room working together, raising money, and getting the projects done on the ground and not just talking about it. One of his personal philosophies also was you can't solve a 1 billion acre problem with a 100-acre solution. And so we're trying to affect 1 million acre solutions on 1 million acre problems.
Wonderful. Thank you, Megan. It really is amazing just to see how far the HOC has grown, and we're excited to continue to watch that progress. So Ken, as a longtime community leader, curious to know what inspired your involvement in the Headwaters of the Colorado, and what strategies you think have been most successful in helping it grow and building collaborative relationships with such a diverse group of stakeholders. We're muted here, Ken.
Excuse me. Thank you, Jake, and thanks to WLA for hosting this webinar. This is a real relevant topic, I think, for many of us as we watched our forests continue to struggle. My inspiration came from the work that was done on the Little Snake River. I'd heard for years about the efforts to do a good job taking care of the stream, improving the overall riparian habitat, at the same time modernizing the infrastructure for irrigation and agricultural uses. That's a relevant topic now because Northwest Colorado, where finally our rivers are all going under administration and are administered by the Division of Water Resources. So making sure that your infrastructure is up to date and measures water accurately is a critical issue. So Pat O'Toole and I have known each other for quite some time, but only as, you know, mutual participants in a lot of the water work that goes on throughout the state of Colorado. Pat, of course, was always involved on a much larger scale. He spent, I can't remember how many dozens of times he's been to Washington, D.C. to testify, and is on first name basis with quite a few of the U.S. senators. So Pat passed this spring, and we just had a memorial for him, and he is commonly referred to as a maniac on a mission, and that is definitely inspirational. So once I got up there and did a tour of the facilities that they've already completed and saw the work that they're contemplating, I was all in. Larry Hicks has been a huge driver for the Little Snake River Water Conservancy District, Conservation District. And, you know, they have done a wonderful job of balancing, you know, a productive agriculture and a healthy forest. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the strategies. And the number one thing to remember here is that we are always stronger when we're working together. And it's so easy to find yourself in a silo thinking that you're doing a fabulous job, which you might be, only to find out later that there's a number of other people who have been working on the same thing. And you will definitely be more effective as you work with others who have common goals in mind. It's so important to really listen to each other. You know, you come in with preconceived ideas about how something should happen, and you'll miss an opportunity to really listen and hear other ideas. And that's one of the main reasons I stay involved, is I'm learning all the time. Another one is to really be honest with your motives. Too often, well-intentioned folks move into a valley. They're interested in they see the beauty and they see the value of this amazing landscape, but their motivations are not always to support the existing agricultural operations and Forest Service efforts. So try to spend some time making sure you understand what they're working on and find those common goals. Having a really transparent process where everyone is kept informed, and always be willing to change your mind. I spent many years in martial arts, and every training session began with a meditation and an opportunity to empty your cup, because you can't put anything else in a cup that's already full. And just remember, to change is to learn, and to be wise is to have changed often. Thank you.
Love that, Ken. Really some great insights in there. Thank you for sharing that. Now to pass it over to a different watershed collaborative, the 232. Lily, curious to know what motivated the formation of the 232, and why it's important to the health of the watershed, and what you're all trying to achieve, and what that really looks like in terms of forestry work and the projects that you've undertaken in the watershed.
Sure. I have a slide that I'll share, but I just wanted to say that Ken's tips for collaboration resonated so deeply with me, and that's really been our experience too, that you can have folks from all different backgrounds, but as long as we're invested in the same thing, we can make a lot of amazing stuff happen, and that humility that it requires is so key. So I'm gonna try to be technologically advanced and share my screen. Okay. So I work for the Forest Stewards Guild, and we're the NGO partner for the 232 partnership. 232 stands for 2 watersheds, 3 rivers, 2 states. And we're working across this crucial landscape that provides drinking water for the cities of Santa Fe and Albuquerque, for the Hickory Apache Nation, but the Rio Grande goes on to provide drinking water to a lot of other people who aren't captured by that sort of municipal level lens. And in 2015, maybe earlier, maybe like 2009, we had some maniacs on our landscape who were really noticing changes in the region, especially related to the size and severity of fire that they were seeing. And this crucial two watersheds started to become, started to look really vulnerable. And so some of those maniacs have retired, some of them are still around, but because we have these shared goals of reducing the risk of uncharacteristic wildfire, increasing the number of fire adapted communities on our landscape, and improving water quality and watershed function, we're able to still come together in a really meaningful way. And so you asked about like, what do we actually do? And the biggest role that the 232 plays is coordinating all these partners. So maybe Lewis or Jake has this map that you all can look at and zoom in on, because it's kind of messy. But the reason I wanted to show it to you is the 232 is this dark red outline, and you can see the number of smaller community-based collaborative groups that are operating on our landscape. And so the 232 really acts as a container to coordinate and bring together all of those folks, so that we can be working in alignment with each other, and reducing our redundancy. So the biggest thing that we are doing in an implementation way is the Rio Chama CFLRP. CFLRP is the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program. It's a federal program, provides a lot of funding. It's $3 million a year for 10 years. The CFLRP is on this map too. It's the sort of burnt orange like speckles, and it overlaps with about 2/3 of the 232 footprint. And so in that CFLRP footprint, we have a bunch of funding to prioritize projects on federal lands. And I have more to talk about with private lands, but I'll save it for the next question.
Great, thanks, Lily. Sounds like there's a lot of amazing work being done. Now, staying in the topic of forestry, Cindy, the Blackfoot Challenge has been involved in some really amazing forestry projects, and is a longstanding collaborative effort for many years. But curious to know from your perspective, what specific challenges your forestry management aims to address, and what achievements have you made so far? And if you're willing to share it, what work still needs to be done?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm going to do my best as well to share my screen. We're good, right?
Yeah, I think for the purposes of what we're doing, that's okay. We see the presenter view, but go ahead and get started.
Okay. So the Blackfoot Challenge, we've been around for a while. We've been, I like to say that the Blackfoot Challenge, the roots are in the 70s. We actually became a nonprofit in 93, so we just celebrated 30 years last year. And similar to what has been said already, we're trying to work together across boundaries, across land ownerships, and conserving natural resources, the rural way of life, which includes working ranches and industries like logging and forestry, forest firefighting, stuff like that. I liked what a lot of the folks have said here. Blackfoot Challenge, the Blackfoot watershed in Montana is actually pretty tiny when you look on a blob on a map, but it's a pretty important watershed. We straddle, we're kind of right in between Glacier and Yellowstone, crown of the continent type of area. We're only 1.5 million acres, but there's all kinds of stuff going on in this valley. Sorry about that. So primarily we've got the Sea Lake region. Most people might know where Missoula, Montana is. That's just to the east of the screenshot here, Bonner. And we're headquartered here in Ovando in the middle of the valley. And the Blackfoot River is really what runs through the middle of our area, and is where a big part of where our collaborative roots come from. We've got a lot going on out here. We've got recreation, there's logging. We've started a prescribed burn program, multi-generation ranches, cattle ranches. There's in other parts of the valley, there's other things going on, sheep. And then there, overtopping all of this stuff, we also have a really robust grizzly bear population, wolf populations, lots of mountain lions. And so we're always trying to strike these balances of how do we have all these different pieces of the puzzle going together. So our roots, again, communications, trust, and trying to be inclusive. So we follow what's called the 80-20 rule, which I talk a little bit about, but that's similar to what's been spoken to already, trying to bring folks together. We're not going to agree on 100%, but let's find those 80% of things that we can agree on. And forestry is really no different, which I'll touch on here in a second. Here's our ownership map. This is a tiny bit dated, but you can kind of see within the valley, within the watershed, it's daunting, you know, and some of these parcels have conservation easements on them and some of them don't. And some of this has changed a little bit as far as who owns what, but for the most part, that checkerboard ownership that's really common across the West is alive and well in the Blackfoot Valley. We have 30 board members that actually coordinate amongst those folks as to what we're doing and when. And so nothing gets done without, we have a little process where we have a thumbs up, a thumbs sideways, or a thumbs down. And any thumbs sideways or thumbs down from any of our board members on a new project, you know, or like a new idea is cause for a deeper conversation. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of work getting 30 people to agree. Just a quick snapshot of our staff. We're growing. We're going to incorporate a new science director to help kind of overlay all of these different programs, because you know nothing really happens in wildlife that doesn't affect forestry, and what I'm doing in forestry is going to affect fire and water. And so trying to kind of jump across disciplines there. I talked a little bit about our consensus driven 80-20 rule. We don't engage in litigation or any sort of lobbying. We try to keep ourselves as neutral as possible and try to appreciate that there are different perspectives from all around the valley. And so, you know, having a lot of long conversations with folks and really working hard to deepen the public and private partnerships. Our landowners are key. This is a landowner driven organization. It started with the landowners, and we really try and maintain that relationship with particularly with the ranchers. But even if you're only here 2 weeks out of the year, we want to hear what you have to say. These are our different programs. So I'll jump into the forestry portion to get to your question. So the forestry portion of the program started in 2007. My predecessors, we treated several thousand acres, over 200 landowners assisted. We'll work on anything as small as an acre or less, and several of our larger ranches we're over 300 acres of trying to do improvements to their forestry and to their property. You know, we're pushing up against 150 years of fire suppression and a history of land management that included a lot of you know, a lot of big trees were logged. There was a lot of indiscriminate logging early in Montana's history. And so the trees are growing back. And now what do we do with too many trees? And sometimes the wrong trees in the wrong places. In 2017, we started a prescribed fire program. This is before my time. And I'm deeply indebted to the people who had the vision to jump on this. It was one of those things where there was passion in the valley. Several of our partners really wanted to try and do more prescribed burning. And the Blackfoot Challenge, this was one of those, you know, yes, maybe no discussions that we had with the board is, does the Blackfoot Challenge have a role in this world? And so through hours of conversation, we came to a yes. And so what I tell people is what I'm trying to do is I'm working with private landowners who want to cut their trees and light their property on fire. So, and some of those partners are, this is University of Montana, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. We have we've been building this. Our largest project is 110 acres of actual burn, and we're really hoping that we can continue this. Bureau of Land Management is a really strong advocate for fire in the area too, and they're hoping to do 1,000-acre burns. And so we're like, okay, well, let us help too. And then I think the next question was, or one of your questions was, what work still needs to be done? So we're a member of the Fire Learning Network, and so we've got a prescribed fire council that stood up in the state. That's a program that was started under the Bullock administration as a Democrat and has been carried with Gianforte as a Republican. So it has broad support across the state. And then I talked a little bit about integrating our programs. So that's it for the first question.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Cindy. It really is so great to have you here today, and just to have that added perspective and experience from such a well-established organization. Just a reminder to the folks out there, if you do have questions, we'd love to see them. So please continue to use the Q&A function, and we look forward to posing your inquiries to our panelists following this second round of questions, which will now kick off with Megan. So Megan, as you think about kind of the HOC and its mission and its direction forward, I'm curious to know, as a landowner, what specific benefits you're hoping to see in your forests, your streams, and on your land. And then looking beyond landowners, why should people in the watershed and even beyond care about the work of the Headwaters of the Colorado?
So the mission of the Headwaters of the Colorado is to create a resilient and functioning forested headwaters within the landscapes of the Little Snake and Elkhead rivers of Wyoming and Colorado through science-based ecosystem planning, coordinated partnerships, focused funding, and collaboration across all lands, which in layman's terms is we're trying to increase the yields of the headwaters of the Colorado. The Colorado River, is basically the entire southwestern portion of the United States. And there's a lot of conflict right now about how that water is going to be used, how it's going to be managed, who gets it, and where it's going to go. And right now, a lot of the vision of people is to take it from agriculture, which is, in my opinion, very short-sighted. And so we're using our idea is to make the forests healthier. And dead forests in this area have impacted runoff of winter snowpack, and the water comes off a lot faster, and which isn't good for our streams. It's not good for our forests. It's not good for agriculture. And so a healthy forest will hold the water longer, and then release it in a less impactful way. And we're looking at doing burns, mastication of timber and brush, water impoundments, irrigation structures and efficiency, stream restoration, and any other ways to help the forest become more healthy. In our forest, which is the Route Metasmo National Forest, there was a big die-off of lodgepole pine about 20 years ago, and it's sort of continuing to this day due to pine beetles. Many of those trees have fallen down, and at this point, big portions of that forest are impassable for game, for livestock, and even for people. I went into the forest not too long ago to look for something, and I actually had to crawl under trees because you can't even get through it. Ken will have a picture that one of our employees took of how it's just stacked up like toothpicks. And it's really a problem. And you talk to the hunters and they'll tell you that the elk can't get to a lot of the forest because the trees are just stacked 40 or 50 feet high. I mean, it's amazing. And so we're trying to work with all of our partners to fix, decades of, in our opinion, mismanagement as has happened in Montana. And it, wasn't deliberate mismanagement. It was everybody thought they were doing the right thing, and it's had a negative impact on our ecosystems. So we're just trying to figure out how to make it move forward. And the only way to do that is through collaboration. One group can't do it by themselves. It's going to take all of us to make it work. And that includes governmental agencies, non-governmental agencies, agriculturalists, conservation districts, the NRCS, universities. All of those people together are the only way to affect these landscape scale changes.
Great, thanks, Megan. All just excellent reminders as to why this work is so important. Really appreciate that. Ken, staying in the vein of the Headwaters of the Colorado here, I've got a bit of a doozy here for you. I'm curious to know what makes a watershed group like the Headwaters of the Colorado or the 232 or Blackfoot effective when it comes to sourcing funding and implementing policies that allow projects to actually happen. And then for the folks out there that might not live in one of these watersheds, curious to know what you think, how folks can provide or how folks can participate or support initiatives aimed at preserving and enhancing the health of forests and watersheds if they don't have an organization like this to plug into.
Thanks, Jake. Great questions. Well, we had the bipartisan infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, and we're seeing a perhaps once in a generation, if not a once in a lifetime investment in some of this infrastructure surrounding water. I mean, we will all agree our most valuable natural resource is water. So how can you be effective at sourcing these funds? Well, this list of partners gives you some idea of this is what Pat did. This is we've continued working with him while he was still with us, and since then to keep these groups together and as stakeholders or as a part of our steering committee, which is our board that in the structure we currently have. And that diversity of partners is what makes you very competitive when you're looking for funds. All alone, it's a good idea. But with this type of a support network, your application for funding for a project is going to float to the top. And not only that, it just gives the funding agency or entity a certainty that everyone has been included in the discussion and that the necessary process has taken place. So you have to start with all of the relevant agencies, both federal and state. It's really important to include your local governments, your county, municipal, and your quasi-governmental agencies like your conservation districts and conservancy districts. The non-governmental organizations, which I'll just refer to as NGOs, are a key part of what's going on today. And so we want to make sure that we've also included them as well. And then there's always this, you always want to make sure that the landowners, that's kind of one of the first places to start. And then, of course, the public at large. Another thing that's really exciting about, looking for funds for this project is we have Wyoming has been doing this. Wyoming's out in front, Colorado's tagging along, trying to keep up. Wyoming has this get her done type of an attitude, and that's so important to be offered, actually working on projects at the same time you're planning your next big effort. How do you participate in this? Well, I think the very first thing you got to do is make sure the property owner is involved. So whether it's a private property owner or whether it's an agency, make sure that they're interested. If you don't have that, you can't even really get a realistic start. Make sure that you read the relevant planning documents that these various organizations have. Morgan, could you go ahead, or Liz, could you go ahead and move to the final slide for me, please? Thank you. Yeah, here's some of the dilemma that we've had in the last few years up in that neck of the woods. Here's that impassable part of the forest that Megan was referring to. After you've looked through these relevant planning documents that often are strategic plans or agency documents, make sure you inventory the existing efforts that are taking place. There's going to be work done by the local agencies and governments, but often their capacity is what's holding them back from doing more. And maybe we can help solve that. We want to make sure that all of the national and statewide organizations, the NGOs, are included in these discussions. The Walton Family Foundation, Trout Unlimited, Nature Conservancy, Wild Turkey Foundation, Mule Deer Foundation, American Rivers, on and on, are all passionate about doing this work and helping to become even more effective and taking good care of our forest. Our forest is a sponge, and we need to make sure that it stays healthy. That's the advice that I would offer, Jake. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. I really appreciate that answer. Hopefully that's helpful to the folks tuning in today. Sounds like there's a number of considerations and ways to stay involved or get involved and support watershed health. So thanks for that great answer. Lily, now over to the 232 and all the work that you guys have accomplished. Curious to know what projects you've implemented together in partnership with other stakeholders, like Ken just outlined. And how has that forest treatment work really impacted the health of the watershed? And as you continue to track those metrics of success, what do you hope to see in the future?
That's a lot of good questions. And my brain is like so back in policy world with Ken, because I think our greatest success is that a bunch of partners got together, 4 different forests across the Forest Service regional line, 2 different states, bunch of landowners, and applied for and were awarded this big federal funding through the CFLRP. But since being awarded that money, which was amazing, right? $30 million over 10 years is great. Partners have gone on to use that money to leverage it to get $35 million more onto this landscape. And all of that 35 million is not focused on national forests, but more looking at private lands, state lands, and tribal lands. So I think what Ken said is like right on point about like figure out what else is going on your landscape. Like somebody's talking about it and plug in to what they're talking about. And then, yeah, really harnessing that power of collaboration to demonstrate to the people with the purse strings that like this landscape is valuable and these natural resources are valuable. That didn't answer your question, but it was just on the top of my brain. So measures of success. Success is a scary word with natural resource management, because even if we were to treat every acre of our 5 million acres, we would have to get back in there again, because it's an evolving process and those treatments need to be maintained. And this landscape has been stewarded for centuries, and we've been kind of maybe mismanaging it for a little while. So I am wary of the word success, but how we are expanding our work is to really focus more on private lands. So much of our focus in the beginning was on these 4 national forests, and now we're starting to look at maps and look at connectivity and realize that if we want to have an impact on this watershed, especially in our neck of the woods, the real headwaters of the Rio Grande is on private land. And there are all these little inholdings in our national forests. So this year we're working to develop our new private land strategy, and we've got some funding through the Inflation Reduction Act to do that and to support landowner participation in our forest restoration and watershed resilience work. So if you identified with that map that I put up earlier and you are a landowner operating in that part of the world, I'd love it if we could chat.
Thanks, Lily. Thanks for making that point about success. I appreciate that. And it really is amazing just to see all the work that's been done. Cindy, over to you in the Blackfoot Challenge here. Curious to know from a forestry science and information perspective, what research has guided your management decisions, and where would you point landowners to when it comes to finding information to help them maybe learn more about planning forest treatment projects of their own, or getting plugged into an organization like yours?
Yeah, great question. And I'm going to echo Lily's comment on success, and and I think maybe to Megan's point too, we're learning, we're relearning in some cases. The no good deed goes unpunished, right? So we'll have we'll try something and maybe it doesn't work, or maybe it did, and we thought we were screwing up and we were doing something right. So constantly learning. And so I really lean heavily on research that is coming out of the Fire Science Center, the Northern Rockies Fire Lab, our University of Montana. We have an incredible wealth of knowledge and research that's going on right here in Missoula, and any of that stuff would be accessible. There's cool little bulletins that the Forest Service puts out. They're science you can use bulletins, and they're really useful. We're also looking really heavily at some of the research that the Nature Conservancy has been doing across the country, and in particular in areas of much heavier populations like Northern California and Oregon, Washington, the Southeast, and New Mexico, Arizona. So anywhere that we have fire on the landscape, whether it's planned ignitions, whether that's wildfire and wildfire response, all of this is being researched a ton. And so, we try and use like as much as we can, try to find where the connections are, where folks can see results. We use a really show don't tell approach to things, and then just recognize, I guess, and I'm noticing just a question that came up in the chat, which is awesome. Yeah, how do you convince people to change their minds? And I guess the hard part is, like, there's going to be some folks for whom it's never enough information. There's never enough science. There's never enough answers. I have been challenged with the question of, there's no good reason to cut a tree. And the gentleman told me, and before you ask, I live in a concrete house. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what would the implications be if 8 billion people in the world all lived in concrete? And so it's kind of one of the ideas that I've been challenged with and really loved about learning. And again, to Ken's point of, like, we're constantly learning, is humans have been on this landscape for quite a while and learned how to live in this landscape and with this landscape, and learn how to live with fire and these watersheds. And they were stewarded. I'm certainly 10 million years ago, or 10,000 years ago, folks made mistakes, but they learned over time. And so we live here now, and so we can learn how to live in these systems. There's great articles about one of my friends actually did a research paper, and it has to do with, like, how ponderosa pine responds to fire, low intensity fire, and what it does to the actual ponderosa itself. And it's incredible. Her name's Sharon Hood, and she published, I think it's called Is Fire a Vaccine for Trees? And so it talks about how there's parts of these systems that we're still learning about, and it's fascinating to be kind of on the front edge of this, and no, we're not going to convince everybody to burn their property. We're not going to convince everyone to cut trees. But if we can get enough folks that are interested, if we can get enough people that are doing it, and learning from other places, and learning from other areas where there is fire, that's kind of what we've been leaning heavily on. We're trying to go small as much as possible. We know that we can show impacts from if a future fire comes through. I would never wish for someone's home to be burnt over, but if it is going to get burnt over, I want them to have done some thinning and a prescribed fire, because we've even seen impacts on areas as small as 5 acres. There's a fire and fire surrogate study that you could probably Google and find information on. We have 3 of those research plots. It's a nationwide study, but 3 of them are here in Montana, in the Blackfoot Valley. And so that's been really exciting to participate in the fire and fire surrogate study, which is looking at plots or portions of land that have no treatment. So kind of left with that whatever happens, happens. Then there's areas that have been burned, areas that have been thinned and burned, and areas that have been thinned only. And so it's been a 24-year study. It started in 2000 and hopefully can continue in many years into the future. So kind of watching those trends over time, seeing how things adjust and change, and how that impacts, beyond just the forest. And again, I think our watershed is so closely linked to the forest and closely linked to fire, in ways that we're just now discovering, or in a lot of cases rediscovering.
Great. Thank you, Cindy. Really appreciate you taking on that question live. And thanks so much, Doug, for asking it. Thank you to all our panelists here today. Really appreciate those great answers. And now excited to field a few questions from the folks in the audience. So just a reminder that if you do have a question, please do use the question and answer function. And don't be shy. If we can't get to your question, we'll follow up with the panelists after today's call, and we'll be in touch with you via email with an answer to your inquiry. So please do keep the questions coming. But with that being said, I'd like to go back to Megan here, and maybe Ken, you can take a shot at this too. From the Headwaters of the Colorado perspective, I'm curious to know how you demonstrate the value and the benefits of the Headwaters of the Colorado as it continues to grow. How are you communicating that to partners, to potential partners, landowners? How are you getting folks to trust you and participate and get involved? Megan, would love to hear from you.
Well, actually, next month we're planning a tour of some projects that meet the criteria of what the Headwaters is attempting to do. We had a stakeholders meeting in Hayden last winter, which allowed people to kind of anyone that was interested explore what was going on with the HOC and kind of where it was going in the future. And we're planning another stakeholders meeting at some point next spring. So we're trying to engage the people outside of the steering committee on a larger scale and keep them apprised of what we're doing. The stakeholders group is a fairly diverse group that then can take their information back to the people within their interested organizations also.
Great. Thanks, Megan. Ken, anything to add?
Yeah, just that several of the presenters today are parts of very successful, longer running projects. And while Wyoming has been very active on this front for some time, the Headwaters initiative, that's a much larger area that we are contemplating in Colorado as well as Wyoming, we're still in the early stages of the outreach and communication. So it's a challenge. It's probably one of the hardest things that you do is make sure that you keep a regular, how do you provide enough information to keep everybody interested and engaged without overwhelming their email? And so making sure that your communication is relevant and timely, and making sure periodically, we have a very vibrant agricultural community. So timing around, in other words, everybody's really busy in the summer. And so you don't have, we have roundtables that don't even meet in the state of Colorado for 4 or 5 months at a time because everyone is so busy with their agricultural operations. So the challenge of making sure everyone is kept up to speed on the progress that's being made and the strategies that are being discussed is not something that we want to take lightly.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. We do have a question here for Cindy. This person is curious to know that as we continue to battle the wildfires that we're seeing everywhere and what seems like all the time, how do these fires impact our ability to get involved in other conservation initiatives? How important is it that we find a way to kind of live with this ever-evolving threat while doing the work that we're talking about here today?
Okay, I think I'll try. So the question is, you know, how do we push forward with this work while things are happening on the ground? You know, and I would hope that at some point the fires that we're seeing are trying to tell us something. They're trying to tell us that fire is a part of these systems. Actually in southern Colorado, I'll find you guys the project, but there was some work that was done that where the Forest Service actually used the pre-planning that they had done, and they would have fires that would start in an area that they said, okay, we're not going to put this fire out, and then they wouldn't put the fire out, you know, because we get nervous about it, and understandably so. And so after a few weeks, it was like, no, we got to really do this, and they actually stuck to it. And one of the comments that was made by their leadership at that forest was, this is ongoing, like this is perpetual. We can't have just one summer where we let a fire go. Or, you know, one of the things that we've kicked around is this idea of, you know, what if instead of doing a prescribed burn in May, we were trying to do it in June or July? You know, when would those fires traditionally have been lit? Under what conditions were these plants designed to receive fire? What about ground nesting birds and ground nesting bird habitat? Like where, you know, what is the appropriate ecological use of fire? And so these, what we're seeing with a lot of the extreme wildfires is that's not an ecologically appropriate fire in every instance. Some areas are designed to burn high intensity, low frequency, but not all. And so it's just kind of, for me, it's a constant reminder of, you know, we're going to have smoke, we're going to have fire. This is part of the system. And every fire we put out is just deferred risk. We're just kicking that can down the road until that acre is going to burn eventually. And we're going to have fires that we can't stop. In Montana, we're really proud of a great, and I'm absolutely, I came up through the fire suppression world. And so I'll steal a comment that I heard from someone, which was, I'm a reformed suppressionist. So, you know, everyone says, oh, you just want to light everything on fire. It's like, no, I don't necessarily, but these systems were designed with fire. And so fire is going to come back into them. And so I would much rather see that done on terms that were maybe not in the extreme ends of the scale as far as fuels and weather and wind. And so how do we do that? And that's what's really great about working with landowners is oftentimes private landowners own more of the property, maybe closer to the bottom of the valley. And maybe that's a safer place and an easier place to stop a fire. And so if we can use their property or their ranch to put a fire up into the timber, you know, that's much safer and easier. It costs less money. So I've been trying to use the fires that we see now as a reminder that, hey, this is part of these systems, and it's going to be here whether we like it or not. And wouldn't it be better to work together to bring it at a better time?
Great, thanks. Yeah, no, that's great. We do have about 1 minute left, but I'm wondering if you could maybe work in an answer to this other question I think is well connected here, Cindy. Do you have any idea, within 30 seconds or so, what impact good versus bad fire has on water quality and quantity?
Oh gosh, within 30 seconds. Okay. So I appreciate the terms good and bad fire, but I also try to remind myself that fire is a process. It does not have an emotion. It does not have feelings or thoughts. It doesn't really care what we're trying to do. Fire is part of this system. And when we talk about good fire in sort of like the traditional sense, we're talking about fire that is going to result in a positive impact to a system. But there's so many little threads to pull on. And so we know that fires improve grasslands as well. And so I'm not talking about just forests, but fires. And so if you've got grass that have deeper roots, maybe there's more diversity in the species that are there, that can come from fire, the mosaic effects that we see from fires. Even large scale fires can have a mosaic in them, and those we call the term is fire refugia. Those areas that didn't burn, why was that the case? I mean, there's a whole 2-hour discussion as to that, but it's having fire on the landscape. We've seen just over time it improves. Maybe it improves the capacity for an area to hold water. Maybe it creates a blowdown mess that blocks a stream that results in basically what beavers used to do. And we talk, gosh, we could have another whole discussion about beavers and what they do to watersheds. And a dear human that I know in the Fire Learning Network wrote a blog that says, if fire were an animal, it would be a beaver. And so, just encourage folks to look at these large scale watershed level, landscape level effects. Sometimes what looks awful at the outset, you walk into a freshly burned forest, it's going to be pretty stark. But over time, you can see the improvement, you can see the plant's response, and it's just, I think it's a beautiful thing that we're working on getting that message out. We're working on helping people like come and see, and really just, there's so much more to cover. I'm sorry I've talked too long, but appreciate your patience.
Not at all. Thank you, Cindy. And thank you so much to Megan, Ken, Lily. Thank you to you all for joining us today. I do see a few more questions that we've received, but just to be respectful of everyone's time here on this Friday afternoon, we'll follow up with you. We'll get maybe even some better and bigger responses via text and email for you. So hopefully that answers the questions that we've had to pass on this afternoon. But again, thank you all so much for joining us. We really hope that you're able to join us for our last and final webinar of this summer series, which will be on August 30th. You can find that information on our website. Hopefully we see you there, where we'll explore the opportunities for reversing desertification through regreening. So we hope to see you again in August. Thank you again for joining us today. And lastly, I'd just like to say another thank you to all the folks that have made this happen, both our staff, the panelists, Gates Family Foundation for their support, and all the other great partners, including the Conscious Bay Research, Lore Foundation, Walton Family Foundation, all of our members. Thank you all so much for all the great work you do. And we hope to see you again in a month. And until then, have a great rest of your Friday and have a lovely weekend. Thank you all.
Thanks,